Hello, this is Katherine Kirby with Creative You Podcast. It's a knitting and crocheting podcast. I also own a yarn shop in Pennsylvania. I know a lot of podcasters try to find the perfect light, the perfect amount of sunlight, but here it is. It's about 9:30 at night, and I haven't found that doing podcasts later at night really hurt. Of course, you don't have the natural light, but still, it's pretty good. So some of my things are left at the yarn shop, but it still seemed like a good day to have a podcast. It's pouring down raining outside. I was just about to take the dog out and it started pouring and thundering, which makes my one dog really go off. So if it thunders, you'll hear him. He ended up throwing up. The cat ended up peeing on the rug, and I thought, my goodness, it's a bedlam here. I was on the phone talking to a good friend of mine and a relative. She has diabetes. She is older, and she had to go to a nursing facility to get 3 times a day antibiotic injections, and she's being quarantined because of this whole COVID thing. So no visitors. She has a phone, but she can't call out, and it's been a huge trial for her. She worries about her husband because he's old and alone. But it also sounds like this staff have gone out of their way to help her. She's allergic to gluten, and one of the staff went to a gluten-free bakery, which you can't exactly say that it's nearby. Another staff member brought gluten-free food in from home. One of the staff members offered to pick her husband up on her day off and when the quarantine lifts to bring him, because right now she's not allowed any visitors. So I really feel for her. And I wish that this whole thing would be over because they're really impacting people's mental health. Most of you know I'm a Christian, and there's a verse in the Bible that might be one of the most difficult things to do. And it says, this is in the book of James, "Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness." Some say patience. "And let patience have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." I remember when my husband was very, very sick, and the pastor came to our house, and he was telling my husband that this is creating patience in you, and just wait until you stand up in church and give your testimony, which instead of dying, my husband did. But for most of us to say, "Oh, I'm so happy because I'm being quarantined and I'm going to just do an incredible thing with this. I might write a book or paint an incredible painting." Most of us, it's very difficult. And I would say that you can only do that through God, through being a channel and have Him pouring His joy into you. It's very hard to be joyful, not just happy, but joyful when things aren't going well. So you see all the games in the background. We have the grandkids over. We play a lot of games. Of course, it's kind of like coffee cups and teacups. You have your favorites, and so you keep playing the favorites over and over and over again. So let me show you some of the things that I have been doing. Most of you also know I don't follow the regular format, but this is the glorious scarf done with one skein of Cairns yarn. This is done in fall colors. I think it's called the Outback. This is all done on one big needle, and when you bind off, it just keeps coming and coming and coming. So this is one that I did before. It's done on a 17 needle. You can tie this all different ways. It's really comfy. It's a cotton yarn. So I started a new one in this color, and I really like this color. It's a dark cranberry, maroon, shades of gray, tan. This is a tape, a flat yarn, and it has a ribbon of color through the middle that's stitched into it. And because my 17 needles were not available, I am doing them on, I think they're probably a 13. So it's not going to be as loose, but it's still going to be really nice. So I'll be anxious to compare them and see. I don't think the camera picks up the intensity of the color, but I was thinking that this would make a really nice t-shirt type top. It's a heavy worsted or a Aran weight yarn, and if these yarns are done on a smaller needle, sometimes they can be kind of heavy and congested. And recently I had a customer that said she had that experience, not with this yarn, but with another yarn. It was a cotton blend, and the top came out heavy and dense, and she didn't like it. But I would bet, done on a bigger yarn so that she had looser stitches, it might have been a completely different experience. Years ago, my pastor used to say that, of course God didn't need to rest, but after he made creation, the seventh day is like that time where you sit back and you just admire everything. And kind of like when you bake a cake and it's fluffy and big and it's multiple layers and the icing, and every time you walk through the kitchen, you just stop and admire that cake. And that song about I left my cake out in the rain? Well, I was telling the grandchildren that many years ago when I was young, my uncle got married. My uncle was like a kid growing up with us. He was older, but he lived beside us, and we were always playing games and things together. But he got married, and his wife had never baked a cake. And so we had this big family picnic planned out by, it was called the water dam, and the water would come down the dam, and there were trees, and it was a little creek for the kids to play. And she couldn't wait to show everyone her 2-layer cake. And back then you didn't get icing in the can. And well, she had the cake on the table, and just like tonight, suddenly this rain came out of nowhere. Everybody ran for their cars, and yeah, the cake got left out in the rain. It was inedible. So my second project, this is a type of project that maybe you don't really enjoy doing it, but forever out, you end up admiring it. 1 rib, knit 1, purl 1 rib can be slow and laborious, but this is by PetiteKnits. I really liked the decreases, and it might show up more on a solid yarn. A lot of people have knitted this hat. I also teach classes, and I think a lot of times that mistakes are made when you're really not positively sure of the object, of the pattern. So you have 13 stitches here and 13 here. You do have to pay this pattern. The directions we'll talk about, well, if it's a knit stitch, the last stitch before the marker, or if it's the first purl stitch before the marker or after, or this or that. And I started to get confused and sometimes do decreases after the marker. I guess what it could have said is after the second marker, and then you come around this way and it would be after the second marker. And as these areas get closer together and you're knitting, you can forget that this marker goes with the second set, or maybe using 2 different colors. So I was almost finished and I didn't like it. And the area of the decreases here was loose looking, even though I really snugged up my yarn. And that period of rest where you are forever admiring it. It's like it takes you this long to knit it in the grand scheme of things, and you enjoy it. I wasn't going to enjoy it. I wasn't going to find it satisfying or gratifying. So off it came. This is one strand of a Euro yarn called BabeJazz. It's a sport weight yarn with cotton, I think, or acrylic and nylon. And so instead of 3 strands of fingering, I use sport weight and then 1 strand of fingering weight mohair with 20% silk. So when it first started out, my mohair yarn was like a gray color, and I really liked it right there. And then when it started getting pink, and I'm that far along, I'm not liking it. But you know, the rule is hold your comments until it's finished, because you can't judge it on this. So then I kept going, and the yarn got to be a deeper rose, and this part gets turned up. And so by the time I'm getting finished, I'm happy with it. I like it. It's just muted. What was kind of surprising me when I looked at all the projects people made is a lot of their hats had an obvious nipple. Now, whether that's a new fad, I'm not a person to follow fads. I showed it to my husband. He's shaking his head no. Although I was reading on a different hat pattern that a woman made a hat, she got involved, she did too many decreases. Pretty soon she's down to 3 stitches, and she just thought, well, what the heck? And she finished it off, and she had a nipple. It was for her son, but her husband kept snitching the hat because he liked the nipple part. In the past, people have not liked having a nipple. That is why usually do your decreases only every other row, so you don't get a sharp point. So even though I'm not a big fan of Knit One Purl One, it is a great hat. And my husband even liked it. So the next one is again BabeJazz. I like this yarn. Now, you can do a lot of cute baby things with this yarn. It's tan, like a blue, a light blue, a little bit of gray, ivory, white, and I'm putting Debbie Bliss Angel, which is a mohair with 20% silk with it. And I couldn't wait. I cast it on tonight. It's done on a 6 needle. And so we'll see. I think my husband already is claiming 1. Now I have enough yarn left to maybe do fingerless mitts. Alrighty. Another Cairns project for the crocheters out there is a free pattern. If you go to Ravelry, you'll see it. For, again, Cairns yarn. Cairns is a place in Australia, Cairns. I've had that word in crossword puzzles because it's also a geographical thing. So you use 2 different colors and a row of one and a row of the next. It's all single crochets. When these colors are all wrapped around your neck, it really looks pretty. And so the colors I tried to do darks and lights, and it does seem like I have more of this left than this, but I guess the ending will tell us. And It's really nice to do because of the color changes. I like it a lot. And that's the Cairns Cowl. If you have never made dryer balls, take some wool yarn. Now it has to be non-machine washable. It has to be the real deal, the real wool stuff. I would take like 3 or 4 balls at a time, wrap it in a ball. The funny thing is this feels like nothing. Then you put them in a pair of knee-high nylons and you tie them off. Then you put another ball and tie it off. And you felt them in very hot water in the washing machine with agitation, and you have a dryer ball. You can put essential oils on these. So I'm learning that detergents and fabric softeners are toxic. They're not healthy for us. And some time back, I had learned that candles are toxic. They're like secondhand smoke or worse. They can ruin electronics in your home, ceilings and so forth. And years ago, my husband would get respiratory illnesses all winter long every year. Now it's not every year, but when I look back, that is when I was lighting candles all the time. And he was encouraging me to. Oh, in some places, people save money on the electricity because the candles give off warmth and heat. So listen to this story. We were getting summer storms and losing our power. And someone gave me a candle for a gift and it seemed to burn clean. The counter is here. Then we have a little bathroom and a window. And we have a full solid shade, not a slatted one, just solid. So the other day, I just suddenly, without any warning to myself, started like this massive fall house cleaning. Just out of the blue, I started unscrewing screens and scrubbing and cleaning and taking down curtains. And what am I doing? I didn't plan on this. And when I cleaned the window, my paper towel was black with soot. Black soot everywhere. And this was just from 2 evenings of lighting a candle, and it had the solid shade to go through. Whoa, I showed that to my husband, said, look at this is terrible. So, and then it seems like after you decide not to ever burn those type candles, only burn soy candles, that is when everyone wants to give you those type of candles for gifts. So I do like to read books. And when we go on day trips or road trips, I like to have a book to read to my husband. So we have friends and we go out in sports cars. And the other day it was a 3.5-hour trip. And this is our book that we read. He does a series with Sam and Remy. They're explorers. They get into a lot of danger and trouble, and they are exploring a kind of like a lost city under the ocean with treasure, and they're getting shot at and people are getting killed, and it's very suspenseful. And they're a cute couple. They're in love, and so we only read that when we're together. And then because we only maybe get to it every other week, I have to go back and read the prologue because we forget what happened 200 years before. I had this book laying around for quite a while and I would start it and then stop. It's a worth read. We all know people, well, I guess we all know people who have an abusive spouse and who hide it and pretend like it's not real. This gal has friends who are trying to help her, and she has a daughter who needs her and needs to be safe. And Glenn Beck, good book. If you want it, drop me a line. I'll stick it in the mail to you. The Road Home, which is a modern day story that mirrors the story of Naomi and Ruth in the Bible. Naomi and her husband went to Egypt because it was or Moab, because it was a famine in Bethlehem. Ironically, Bethlehem is called the house of bread. Well, while they're there, her husband dies. Her 2 sons marry Moab women, which were enemies of the faith, and now her sons are dead. In the 10 years they've been married, there haven't been any babies born, and Naomi is going back home empty, which means she has no grandchildren. And it was a great shame not to be a mother, but it's also a great shame to have your family line die out. Ironically, Naomi gets back to Bethlehem and everybody seems to be doing fine. I mean, didn't they have the famine? People see her and they go, "Is that Naomi? That doesn't look like Naomi. She's been through so much that she looks bitter." Have you ever met anybody that's gone through some stuff and you haven't seen them for years and they look so different? She's been through a lot, but her daughter-in-law, it's Ruth and Orpah. Supposedly Oprah Winfrey got her name from Orpah, but her mother spelled it wrong. But Ruth decides to go along, even though it's a strange land. She's from a pagan faith. This culture may not be friendly to women from Moab. And she gives this famous line that, "I'm going to go with you. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God." And it also turns out to be a love story which mirrors God's love for us, that he redeems us. So back then, you could keep your land, get your land back and all, but you needed a kinsman redeemer. And in that story, it's Boaz. And Boaz ends up marrying Ruth. And she becomes the great-grandmother to King David in the Bible. So it's a modern-day twist. So we'll see. But my favorite read this month was the Printed Letter Bookshop. I loved it. If you want to read this book, drop me a line. I'll stick it in the mail to you. It has a very gentle Christian undertone. It's about 3 women that run the bookstore. They all have issues, problems. They all have different personalities. And you feel like you could just go there, that it's a real place. And I wish there would be a sequel. I liked it so much. And lastly, you think, oh, this is the only thing this woman do is sit around and read The Sun. I've had this laying around for, I don't know, a while. 3 generations. I didn't know they had made it into a TV series that lasted at least 2 full seasons. It sounds like they took a lot of liberties with the TV show. For me, the most interesting part was when Eli got captured by the Indians and lived with them for 3 years. Other than that, I mean, it got great reviews, but I'm kind of sick of stories about rich people that aren't happy, and you want to end that book feeling good for them, feeling good for their life, and yet it falls flat. And in the end, the granddaughter has a chance to pull it all together and make things right, and she fails miserably. So it was still, I guess, a worthwhile read. Yep, you might hear my washing machine in the background. My husband's been going through a phase where he puts laundry in and then he forgets it. And then I come along and it's wet and it stinks. And then you have to wash it sometimes twice because it just has that nasty odor. This was the child's poncho that I finished. I wish I could have a little model and have it on because I think it would really show how cute it is. Remember the lion bonbons? You get a pack of maybe 6 different colors. That is what I use for that. And then the rest is lion cottonese. And it was fun. I don't know why I left it lay around so long. I think this could be a year round. I would love to do it in alpacas and neutral colors with maybe a flash of turquoise and something else. So I don't think this will fit any of, oh, look at that. That would make a cute little skirt. Aha, that's how designers get inspired. So my husband and I went shopping the other night. Oh, this is going to be my next book. Run Away to Heaven, the story of Harriet Beecher Stowe, who wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin. I looked this book up on Amazon and used like $769 or something. Did you ever see those on Amazon and then the next time the book's selling for almost nothing and you wonder like, what's going on here? So that's going to be my next book. And Mary's Blessing, which starts out on the Oregon Trail in the 1870s or 80s. So my husband and I decided to run out to the thrift shop the other night because you never know what you're going to find. In the 6.5 years since I've been running the shop, I have had like $0 to spend. That makes spending when you do have a few dollars very special and very selective. Well, the thrift shop is now closed at 6, no longer at 9 or 8, but it's the same thing, no employees, but we ended up going over to Ollie's. And if you don't live around the Ollie's is good stuff cheap. It's a big store. They have a little bit of everything. And so I found some knitting books for the shop that I think will be really good. It's like, is it called One Stitch More? Great for beginners. They keep adding a stitch. So I got some of those and some other things and some gluten-free cereal and some gluten-free gingerbread mix. And my husband got a few things. And I saw chocolate chips for $1.99, which I thought was a good price. My 2 grand boys that I talk about, Tobin and Nolan, when they come over, I usually bake brownies. And I've told the story in the past that Nolan thought that I bake brownies every day, kind of like N equals 1. Every time I come to Grandma's, she is baking brownies. So the other day I thought, these boys are going to grow up because I've been afflicted with this allergy to gluten that I don't bake them cookies and baked goods. And I really want them to have that memory. So there's a recipe for peanut butter cookies with no flour. You take like a cup of peanut butter, I think it's a half of cup of sugar, 1 egg, and a little salt, and you just put them in balls. And I remember as a kid squashing them down with a fork, and I got these big cookies. Well, there was disappointment because where are the brownies? So when I'm at Ollie's, I'm thinking, it'd be nice to make them chocolate chip cookies. I don't know that I ever have, but so I put a handful of packs of chocolate chips into the cart, and my husband was supposed to take me for Chinese. We're at the register. We're the only people in the store, and I decided that's it. I am spending $30, $29.99 for 1,500 count queen size sheets. I thought this is a steal. Spending my husband's money. We've never had good sheets like that. And let me testify, I am even sleeping better They're just so cozy. And what set this whole thing off was I got a magnifier app on my phone. And when you magnify your sheets and it looks like a basket weave and you see kind of how flimsy they are, I thought, you know what, so I had sheets and they're a lovely ivory color with a little satin trim. But our total was $108. And my husband says aloud, $108? It's a teenage boy behind it. Are you sure? Yes, sir, $108. So my husband is so blown away by this that he drives right past the Chinese restaurant. We drive home. I'm gawking like, what? No Chinese? Okay. And we get home and I start getting things out of the bag and checking them off against the slip. And inadvertently, we got charged $9.99 for every pack of chocolate chips. Man, they would have been expensive cookies. So my husband was out the door to return them. I decided to try out the gluten-free cereal and had 2 big bowls by the time he came back. And then he said, I'm really sorry, we were going to have Chinese. I said, well, I just ate cereal. And the other thing I got, which my husband thought it was a foolish buy. I told him I felt like a kid being what's the word, with my father, saying that's a waste of money. Those fish toys for cats that are battery operated and they flop all over the place. You know, when you don't have much money to spend, you actually want something dumb and stupid like that. Well, as he's pulling out to return the chocolate chips or to get a credit, I'm realizing that the zipper doesn't work, so I have to return it. But I really want to see if the cat goes after it and maybe even make a little video that would go viral. Hey, I'm due for that. Thank you for any new subscribers, by the way, and thank you. I realize I'm a little tiny guppy in a big pond, and I really appreciate that you want to join in on my podcast. This is Kid Cotton yarn, which is a euro. This is a rich gold color. And I'll have to put the name up. It's something string bag. And I love the bottom of it, the way you have like a flower. Let's see if you can see that there, right there. And it's very easy. It's a free pattern because you're just chaining 5 and going in each space. And when you get, I think, 24 rows, you start the strap. So a $10 project. This is a nice cotton weight, a sport weight. And I could make the bag longer or smaller. And I should be finished by the next podcast. So the other day when we were on our car trip and I was reading the Clive Cussler book, we stopped at a market. It actually turned out to be Newmarket, and it was called Butcher's. This was yesterday. They had amazing produce everywhere. They had mums this big, 2 for like $11. We got big heads of cabbage for $1, corn on the cob, new little potatoes, which that brought back great memories for me. When I was a child, my grandfather lived next door in the house where my mother grew up. And he had a big, we called it a lot, and he would plant tomatoes and different things, but half of it was corn, and it was called white silver sweet corn, and it was so good. So they had white sweet corn, and we got that. And then he planted potatoes. And if you don't have any kind of a farming background, when your potatoes get old and they have those nasty gristly things. Well, that's the part they cut out and plant, and that becomes potatoes. So he had an old-fashioned plow, and once a summer, all the relatives would gather, and there was lemonade and sandwiches and cookies, and he would hold on to that plow, and it would go through the ground, and all these potatoes would just come tumbling out. And so all the kids and adults would go behind and pick up potatoes, and we'd have bushels of potatoes. But then for a few weeks after that, my sisters and I would go out in the evening with spoons, and we would find little tiny potatoes, and my mom would cook them for us, and we'd put butter on them. So as we were coming back, I got a call from the older grandson saying, would I keep the little guys? Sure. Well, we cooked up all this stuff, the fresh corn on the cob, the fresh produce and everything. And these boys kept asking for more and more and more. And Grandma, can I have more? And is there more corn? And fresh broccoli. And Nolan loves broccoli. But it makes you understand how old and stale the produce that we get in the store is when this is fresh. It was just phenomenal. And they kept saying, thank you, Grandma. Thank you, Grandma. Thank you for having us over. We had such a wonderful time. We can't wait to come again. And they knew they wouldn't have gotten a meal like that from their teenage brother. So it was just a wonderful day. And so I still have some more things to show you. I have a hat that just needs to have the finishing touches on it, called Fidra. I'm sorry if I showed this last podcast. You know, it's the kind of thing that when you see it, you're drawn to it. And I have, again, a strand of mohair, and this has yak. I'm almost sure I showed this on the last podcast. I just need to get out double points and finish it. But when I started to do that, somehow I was getting off track and had to rip back. So I just need to get my head in the game. But when I saw the photos of people wearing it, I wasn't crazy about how it looked on, which to me, it doesn't matter how great a shawl looks if it doesn't look good on, or how great a hat looks if it doesn't look good on. And it's kind of where I'm at with this, if it doesn't look right on. So on a whim, at the shop, sometimes when it's not busy and I'm there by myself, I'll just get cast on itis, although I'm trying to curve that. And my grandson Nolan loves blue. And I found this free pattern called the Prichard Sweater. And it's done with a bulky yarn, I think. And a 10 needle. So that's going to be his crew neck. And he used to be a slender kid, but he's packed on the weight. And that is a symptom of this whole COVID thing. Apparently when you don't get enough sunshine and then you're actually also not getting enough exercise, a lot of kids have gotten heavy. This whole thing has been really, really hard on the kids. The one thing that I don't know about is, do you see how the sweater rides up? Now, we don't have a neck plop down in our middle. Our neck is closer to the back, but I don't know if it's just the way she's standing, but I also seem to see it here. So we'll see. Does it fly out? I think he's gonna love this if it fits him. He is starting to slim out a little bit. So that is the Prichard Sweater, which is a free Ravelry download. And I don't have fancy bags like a lot of podcasters. I just need to take the time and make some because I have fabric and everything. I just need to do it. And then the other thing that I did on a whim is, oh, where's my pattern? By Elizabeth Smith Knits. And it's something like the schoolgirl cardigan. There is a picture. It's like, is it mistake rib? She has very nice charts with sizing. It is a pay-for pattern. And this is one of these yarns at the shop that nobody wanted. It appeals to me because it's twisted. But when you start to knit with it, it very gently kind of untwists, which to me gives it a light airiness. And while it may not be everybody's favorite color, hey, I walk the dogs and all that. I don't need to be stepping out of a catalog looking picture perfect. And I'm kind of getting tired of, well, that color is not my color. I don't look good in that color. Hey, you know, I want it. So it's top down. It gives this neat look that when you look at the picture, the photo, do you ever notice how some people say picture when you look at the picture? Well, anyway, when you look at the photo, it looks like you have a seam, but it's just a neat little detail that I like. And oh, I told myself I'm going to go through one ball a day and I'll have this done in a week, but that didn't happen. Yeah. I think maybe the last thing is a hat that is supposed to be super quick. There's a better picture of the sweater. Yeah. Done with 2 strands of a super bulky yarn. This is Love Wool. It was a Debbie Bliss yarn, 85% virgin wool, 15% alpaca. I love the color. It has, if you can see, different colors of blue. And it is, I don't know if this person invented this stitch or, and I had the pattern right here and I don't want to rattle and make a bunch of noise. Here we go. Wanded. And it might be $6 or $7. I'm not sure, but it gives you a neat tutorial of how you're making this. And everybody that made it said, oh, this was really fun. I want to make more. I think I'm wrong. It might just be 1 strand on a 15 needle. But she also gives you directions for worsted weight yarn and bulky yarn. So I can't wait to do that. And if it turns out great, I might make a bunch of different colors for samples at the yarn shop. So in closing, I found this old book with my stuff written in like 1928. Diseases and Problems of Old Age by Dr. Killer, no first name. My husband and I, it's been different. I'm 13 years younger, and while we never minded it, it's kind of strange now at this point in our life where his age has really caught up with him, and it just is what it is. We watched this movie the other day called The Hero with I'm going to forget his name. Who's the guy married to Catherine Ross all the years with the premature graying and tall guy with a very, very deep voice? Sam, oh my, I'm sorry, I can't remember. He played an aging man. I don't want to give away the movie, but he starred in a movie 40 years before that made him famous, and ever since then, that's his only claim to fame. And he's been very let down by his life, and all of a sudden, when things are at a very bad time, he meets a woman who's much, much younger, and she's a comedian. And when she gets up to do her comedy routine, I can't believe how she throws him under the bus for his age. I don't like cursing. There's definitely cursing in the movie. He did a very, very good acting job. Catherine Ross, who I think he's still married to, played his ex-wife in the movie. And yeah, the older man. Chapter 15, Growing Old Gracefully. They say a woman ages by how she looks, a man by how he feels. The old man has no reason to be ashamed of the fact that he is old. Every part of life has its compensations, and even to the aged, there is a silver lining behind the dark cloud. Age should rest on the wrinkled brow as a priceless diadem, beset with jewels of wisdom. Ripened by the passing years, he should realize that were it not for the work of men after 60, the art, literature, and music of the world would be infinitely poor. A man spends long years in accumulating knowledge, and then in his ripened maturity, he bursts forth and gives this polished wisdom to the world. And it goes on about all the accomplishments of elderly people, even in their 80s. They showed that under some surrounding mature lives can pass into the ripeness of old age without decay, being the better able to produce worthwhile and beautiful things because of the experience that can only come through the passing years. It is interesting to note that of all the cases of old people who have lived worthwhile lives, not one of them ceased to work. Even though they could only do a little each day, they kept on doing it. And it goes on. They were able to grow old gracefully. Age to them was not a disease, but a gesture of increasing power and ripening abilities. They were also willing to admit they were not young anymore and lived accordingly, but they were had so tuned their intellect to the approach of old age that it lost the terror that it had for many persons. You know, it's sad when somebody doesn't act their age. When they're 80, but they dress like a teenager and they keep insisting people think I'm 20 years young. You just gotta be who you are. And the last chapter of Proverbs, the Proverbs woman, she laughs at the years to come. She's comfortable with who she is. She doesn't try to be younger. She doesn't try to be, who she's not. She's content and she laughs at the years to come. So with that, I think I'm going to say God bless you. We all know we're living in difficult times. The Bible is such a source of comfort. And Paul said that whether I'm basically rolling in the money or whether I'm poor, I have learned to be content. Contentment with godliness is great gain. And we spend time belly aching about what we don't have and what we have that we don't want and so forth. And these are not normal times. And a lot of people are suffering. But try to find a satisfying, gratifying things. Knit, crochet, thank God. Be grateful for things. And I'm not saying put on a false, but realize that God is there. He is good. He knows what you're going through, and He is your source, and He loves you. So with that, I'm going to say good night. Sleep tight. Thank you for spending time with me. I love sharing all the beautiful things, and I'll catch you next time. Shine, baby, shine.